My name is Nathan Cole. I'm 32, and I run a small auto repair shop on the edge of Asheville, North Carolina. Nothing fancy, just 3 bays and grease that never fully washes out from under my nails. 2 years ago, my wife Megan collapsed in our backyard while watering her tomato plants. Cardiac arrest, the kind that gives no warning. 1 second she was laughing at her phone. The next she was gone before the ambulance turned onto our street. After that, I learned to live inside silence, eating dinner standing at the counter so I wouldn't have to look at the empty chair. That Friday night I drove to Maple and Thyme, a little cafe 2 blocks from my shop because going home early meant sitting alone with nothing but the hum of the refrigerator. I ordered black coffee, picked a booth near the window, and told myself I'd leave the second I finished it. That's when she walked in. She looked around 27, wearing a thrifted denim jacket that had clearly been someone's favorite for a long time, holding the hand of a little girl in mismatched socks and a paper crown that said "Birthday Princess," even though it wasn't anyone's birthday. The woman moved like she was bracing for something. Her name, I would learn later, was Brooke. In the back booth sat a man in a blazer that cost more than my truck, scrolling his phone like the world owed him entertainment. His name was Wesley. When Brooke and the girl reached his table, his expression slammed shut. Brooke tried to smile. "I'm so sorry. My sitter canceled an hour ago. This is my daughter Daisy." The little girl gave a small wave. Wesley didn't wave back. "You didn't say anything about a kid being here. I came for a date, not a daycare shift." Brooke's voice dropped, pleading. "She's quiet, I promise. Can we just try this?" Wesley leaned back, arms crossed, voice loud enough that 3 tables turned. "I'm not signing up to be somebody's instant father. You should have mentioned the extra baggage before I wasted my Friday." The word baggage cracked through the cafe like a dropped plate. He stood, dropped a 5 on the table, and walked out without glancing at either of them. Brooke sank into the booth like her knees had stopped working. Daisy tugged her sleeve, voice small. "Mommy, what's baggage? Am I baggage?" Brooke pulled her daughter into her arms so tight it looked like she was trying to physically block the words from reaching her. "No, baby, you are not baggage. You are everything good I have." Her voice cracked at the end of that sentence. I sat there gripping my coffee cup, thinking about Megan, about how she used to say that staying quiet when someone's being cruel just makes you part of it. So I stood up, walked over, and crouched down to Daisy's eye level. "Hey," I said gently, "that guy who just left, he's an idiot and wrong about basically everything." Brooke looked up, eyes wet, somewhere between embarrassed and ready to defend herself from one more disappointment. "I'm Nathan. I think your crown is excellent. Very official looking." Daisy almost smiled. "I'm Daisy. I'm not a birthday princess. I just like the crown." "That's an even better reason to wear one," I told her. I looked up at Brooke. I was about to eat dinner by myself, which gets old fast. "Would it be okay if I sat with you two instead?" Brooke stared at me like she was trying to figure out the catch. Then Daisy, completely unprompted, patted the seat beside her. "You can sit here." Brooke laughed despite herself, wiped her cheeks, and nodded. "Okay, you can stay." That night stretched on longer than any evening I'd had in 2 years. Brooke was guarded at first, hands wrapped around her mug like it was the only solid thing in the room. When Daisy knocked over the sugar packets, I helped rebuild the little tower without comment. When she asked if dinosaurs could swim, I told her some absolutely could and some would sink like a brick, which made her cackle so hard she nearly slid off the booth seat. Brooke told me she worked mornings at a daycare center and evenings stocking shelves at a grocery store, that she'd been raising Daisy alone since her husband Tyler left 14 months earlier, packed 2 bags while she was at work, and texted her from the airport that he wasn't built for the family thing. I told her about Megan, about the tomatoes, about learning to live in a house that used to be loud. Brooke reached across the table and rested her hand over mine for just a second. "I'm sorry," she said. "Thank you," I answered. And for a while, neither of us said anything else. When the cafe started closing, I carried Daisy out to Brooke's car because her head kept tipping forward, and buckled her into her car seat with hands that had spent years on engine bolts but somehow remembered exactly how. "You do that like you've done it before," Brooke said. "Nieces," I told her. "You learn fast or you get fired from babysitting forever." She actually laughed, the first laugh that didn't sound like it was covering something up. I scrawled my number on a napkin. "No pressure. Just dinner sometime. No Wesleys allowed. Thank you for sitting down, Nathan." "Thank you for letting me," I said, and watched her taillights disappear before I let myself feel how much lighter I felt walking back to my truck. The weeks after moved slowly at first, a text about Daisy's dinosaur theory, coffee on the days Daisy was at preschool, the park on weekends where I pushed her on the swings until my arms ached. Brooke started letting herself rest on the bench instead of hovering, like she finally trusted someone else to catch what she dropped. I fixed her leaking faucet, brought soup when Daisy had a fever, and never once made it feel like a transaction. One night, after Daisy fell asleep on my couch mid-cartoon, Brooke stood at my sink staring out the window with wet eyes. "I'm not used to someone staying," she said quietly. "Then we'll work on that," I told her. "I'm not Tyler," I said. "I want to believe that," she whispered. "Then let me prove it. You don't have to believe it tonight." That should have been the start of something steady, but 2 weeks later her texts got short. She canceled the park twice, stopped answering calls after dark. I recognized that particular silence. I'd lived inside it for 2 years after Megan died. So I drove over uninvited one night and found her in an old sweatshirt with red-rimmed eyes she'd clearly been hiding. "Tyler's back," she finally admitted, showed up out of nowhere saying he heard she was seeing someone and wanted to know what kind of man was around his daughter. He threatened to fight for custody if she didn't, in his words, clean up her situation. "He doesn't even want her," Brooke said, voice shaking. "He just can't stand that I might be okay without him." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Because this is exactly the kind of mess men run from," she said. "Lawyers, court dates, a kid stuck in the middle. You already buried one person you loved. I didn't want to hand you a war, too." I pulled her against my chest. "I'm not him," I said. "I know," she whispered. "But knowing doesn't make me less terrified of losing her, or of loving you, and then standing in this kitchen alone again, wondering why I wasn't enough to make someone stay." "I need time," she said. I hated those words, but I respected them. I nodded, told her I'd still be here, and walked out into a hallway where I had to fight every instinct not to knock again. 2 unbearable weeks passed. Then, on a freezing January night, Brooke's car died on a dark road, Daisy bundled in the back seat, asking why the engine sounded funny. Brooke called 3 people first, nobody answered, until Daisy piped up from the back. "Why don't you call Mr. Nathan? He fixes everything." Brooke told me later she stared at her phone forever before dialing, terrified I wouldn't pick up, more terrified that I would. I answered on the first ring, grabbed my keys before she even finished the sentence, and got there in under 15 minutes. The second she stepped out of that car into the cold, she broke down completely, and I just held her and said, "I'm here. We'll deal with everything else once you're warm." That night, after fixing the loose battery cable and getting them both back to my place, Brooke told me everything. The custody papers, the threats, the shame that made her push me away. I called a lawyer the next morning, a sharp, quiet woman named Diane Foss who'd helped one of my mechanics through a similar fight. Brooke fought me on letting me help pay. "This isn't charity," I told her. "This is me standing next to the person I love." And the room went completely still because neither of us had said that word yet, and I didn't take it back. The months that followed were a slow grind of paperwork and missed shifts to cover legal bills, while Tyler painted himself in court documents as a devoted father who'd simply been kept away. The truth told a different story. Diane pulled bank records, visitation logs, every unanswered birthday text, and Tyler's confidence cracked further with every question he couldn't answer. On the day of the hearing, Brooke wore her only blazer and whispered that she thought she might actually be sick. "Look at me," I said. "You're not in there asking permission to be her mother. You already are that. You're only proving what's already true." Inside, Tyler tried to perform concern, but Diane's questions stripped it bare fast. How many doctor visits? How many school events? How much support sent on time? And his answers shrank smaller each time. Then Brooke spoke, voice shaking at first, steadying as she described the double shifts, the fevers handled alone, the lies she told Daisy so she wouldn't think her father simply didn't care to call. "I'm not perfect," she told the judge, "but I have never once made my daughter wonder if I was coming back." When the ruling came, Brooke kept full custody. Tyler got supervised visits only, and a mandatory parenting course before anything could change. Outside the courthouse, Daisy ran straight into her mother's arms, then looked up at me. "Did you win too, Mr. Nathan?" "The biggest win is that your mom keeps smiling like this," I told her, and she handed me a dandelion from the courthouse lawn like it was a medal. By summer, Brooke and Daisy had moved into my house, slowly, mostly because Daisy kept asking why we couldn't just sleep there every night already. The quiet rooms I'd lived in for 2 years filled up with crayons and a girl declaring which corner belonged to the dinosaur princess. One ordinary Tuesday, while I fixed her broken nightlight, Daisy asked, completely casual, "Daddy Nathan, can you take me to school tomorrow?" My hand froze on the screwdriver. "Of course I can, sweetheart," I managed, then stepped into the hallway so she wouldn't see me wipe my eyes. Brooke followed and wrapped her arms around me from behind. "She chose you," she whispered. Exactly 1 year after that first night, I brought them both back to Maple in time. Same booth, same smell of coffee, the owner Mrs. Patterson sneaking dinosaur stickers onto our table without being asked. I'd carried the ring in my jacket pocket all evening, and Daisy, who is terrible at keeping secrets, kept vibrating with excitement until I finally stood and walked around to Brooke's side of the booth. "1 year ago," I said, "you walked in here thinking you were about to be rejected, and I was sitting right there dreading another lonely dinner, and then some idiot finally left and gave me the chance to ask if I could sit down. You are not baggage, Brooke. Neither is Daisy. You're the reason this house has noise in it again. Will you marry me?" She was already crying and nodding before I finished the sentence. "Yes, Nathan, yes." Daisy threw both arms in the air and shouted, "We have a family now!" And the whole cafe burst into applause, while Mrs. Patterson brought out juice and champagne on the house because, she said, she'd been waiting an entire year for exactly this moment.